everyone. I'm Gabe Moynagh. I'm the co-founder of VikingCloud. I'm also the general manager of our Level 4 business. So our customers are acquiring banks, payment processors, ISOs, and we work with these partners to try and deliver PCI DSS compliance to their simple, small, their Level 4 merchants. It's lovely to be here.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Pierce. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer for VikingCloud. And I've had the honor of working with about 1,000 of our professionals globally as we focus on compliance and cybersecurity solutions. And many of these professionals over the past couple of years have focused on risk-directed security. But what I can tell you is when we were backstage, we met Reed, the storm chaser, and Gabe and I just might be changing careers after today. It's a very high probability, but we'll get going forward. So Gabe, why don't you open us up with the agenda and things we're going to discuss?
Yeah, sure. So today's presentation, it's not about the past, but we are going to talk a little bit about the past because it's relevant to the future. Today, small, simple merchants are facing a lot of change, and it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, thanks to tokenization and biometrics, they're handling a lot less raw PAN. But on the other, with the rise of new payment rails, there's just a buy now, pay later, account-to-account payments. There's just a lot of new ways for them to cut themselves. The good news, though, is this community has a lot of experience evolving, and I think we can learn from the past to help these simple, small merchants get better secured in the future.
So we're going to then turn to risk-directed security and talk about some details. What is it? What's the value? And why now is a time for its adoption? And then we'll close off with some industry implications. So let's get started. And what I wanted to do is, since we're discussing where the industry is moving, I want to ground us in a couple of principles. And the one is on the left side. The best way to predict the future is to invent it. This is a quote by a gentleman, Alan Kay. Alan is an educator, he's a computer pioneer, and he was the father of, many thought, of personal computing. And he was a big advocate for personalization. So today, as we talk about risk-directed security, think of this concept of personalization. It's going to be important. The second quote is by my esteemed colleague, Gabe Moynagh. And it's, but to invent wisely, we must first understand what came before. So if we're going to think about the future, we also have to have a foot in the past and understand what the past taught us. So Gabe, why don't you give us some insight into the history of PCI?
Yep, glad to. Yeah, so like many good stories, the PCI DS story begins during a storm. So it seems like in the 90s, PAN data was just lying around everywhere, and fraud losses ballooned into the hundreds of millions of dollars. The brands responded, they created their own programs, but there was somewhat of an overlapping patchwork of requirements. Then, in around 2004, something truly brilliant happened. They came together. They created a unified standard. Version 1, version 1.1, the formation of the PCI Council. These are really amazing chapters in the PCI DSS journey. But looking back, I think what's really striking about it is that unity created this community that allowed the standard to evolve and to change. And I think it has done so in a really pragmatic way over those years. And we can see that pragmatism even in version 4, where the council created these future-dated requirements. They gave us time and space to plan and budget for these changes, while at the same time still really clearly showing us the direction, the standard, the industry was headed. And I'm sure we could probably pick out one or two faults, and I'm sure this journey was not as rosy as I'm making it out to sound. But the truth is, there is nothing like this data security community in any other industry vertical. Now we're at sort of like the end of this 20-odd year journey. One of the brands has put forward this new suggested approach to bring risk-directed approach to small businesses, to provide better security to the small business community. We really like it. We want to talk to you a bit more about it, but first, we need to talk a little bit more about PAN.
Oh, that's my key. I click.
A little bit more about
oh, there
PAN.
we go.
Thanks.
We had a
when
delay.
When the standard first came out, the mission was obviously really, really clear: protect PAN at all costs. Hackers love stealing card numbers, and it was the right thing to do. Protecting the PAN was the best way to reduce breaches, and it really worked. For level 1 and 2 companies, especially, these controls made a huge difference. At the same time, the industry has been working really hard in that time frame to try and remove as much PAN as possible from the ecosystem. So today, companies of all sizes, but particularly small, simple merchants, they handle less and less and less PAN, which that raises a really interesting question. If the PCI is built around PAN, PAN is the defining factor. When PAN is gone for all intents and purposes, what does that mean for these simple merchants? The good news is, I thought I was coming into this week with this real big hot take around PAN. Yesterday, Candace's presentation, she already acknowledged this, and I think, it's clear that once again, the community is anticipating this and is thinking about changes that will help going forward. So I think this community has a lot going for it. We have a global unified standard. We have lots of experience, changing that standard, evolving that standard. We already have a standard that defines big and small merchants, complex, simple merchants, and we have this really great ecosystem where we all have a voice, and I think that's only getting better based on what I heard yesterday. So there is just one paradox, I think. PAN disappearing at simple merchants, it's not actually resulting in more simple merchants becoming PCI DSS compliant. PAN disappearing at simple merchants, it's not yet reducing the millions of dollars of fines that these merchants pay each year for not doing PCI compliance. And PAN disappearing at simple merchants will not be a silver bullet for cybersecurity for reasons that Kevin is going to talk to us about now.
Thank you, Gabe. So in those couple of years that I discussed, we've done a lot of research with merchants. And one of the sobering facts that we still find with these simple merchants is that they're still the #1 targets for cyber criminals. And that's due to the fact that they just don't have adequate cyber protections. And when we talk to them, we ask, okay, what are you doing for cybersecurity? And in many cases, they say, well, we use our friends, we use our family, or we do nothing. And it's not that they don't want to be protected. It's actually they want to be protected. They just don't have the knowledge and the tools to get adequate protections. And when you're a small merchant and you don't have adequate protections, it's actually it can be very devastating. So you see here on the screen, there's several things that can occur: business downtime, loss of customers, loss of sales. Those are real impacts to these merchants. And data like this, these statistics, we all see them. They're in our presentation. They're all over the industry. But what we really like to do is we like to actually talk to merchants. We talk to numerous ones. There's one on the screen. And let me give you an example. So this is a small healthcare vet clinic, actually in South Carolina. And this customer, when we talk to them, they say, we did our SAQ every year. We tried to have the protections that we needed, but we had a problem. And the problem was, one day, all of our computer systems went down. We got this note: you have to pay $10,000 to bring your computer back up, all your systems back up. And $10,000 it's a lot of money for a small business. But when we actually think about it, what was happening is this business during that period, they couldn't serve their customers and they couldn't provide adequate care to even the animals in their clinic. So there's one important point and key point that I want us to think about today. When we're talking about risk and risk-directed security, we're not talking about the statistics. We're talking about providing adequate cyber protections to real businesses and to real people. So if our goal is to provide better cyber protections to these simple merchants, and that is the goal that Gabe and I are talking about today, then the industry must evolve. And the good news is that the industry today has the technologies and the platforms available right now to make that transition. So if we actually consider the protections being afforded the payment data, the industry's done a phenomenal job. And in fact, many of the card brands, as Gabe was alluding to, believe that the majority of transactions are going to be devoid of PAN in the next couple of years. And there's a host of technologies that are driving that. However, the story does not stop there. We're living in a world of explosive change. Payment rails are ever expanding. And AI is changing the tools available to cyber attackers, creating new attack vectors that are being deployed at speeds we've never seen before. And when we talk to our enterprise clients, the clients that have hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D investment, they're having a difficult time adapting to this new environment. But what do SMBs do? What do these simple merchants do in a world? How do they survive? And more than survive, how do they thrive when attacks are broader, more sophisticated, and growing bigger by the day? So we have definite ideas on what to do. And to be clear, compliance frameworks, they're essential. Compliance frameworks are a foundation. It's a foundation on which we build an approach that evaluates each merchant's unique attack surface and provides personalized protection. We must keep in mind, though, that we just talked about, that modern threats, especially using AI tools now, are moving faster than many frameworks can adapt. So risk-directed security, we believe, is an essential part of the answer for the industry. So Gabe, where as an industry do we move on from here?
So yeah, I think we're at an inflection point. So any simple merchant that goes through the PCI DSS process and does it properly, they get a ton of value from PCI DSS. But the fact is, today millions of simple merchants are just not completing the SAQ, or that they're paying fines. So I think we could flip the model. We now, we had the best available technology to do what we did with level 4. I think now with new third-party risk assessment tools, we just have better technology, and we should use it to try and help drive more security to these small businesses. So I think one idea is, instead of paying for penalties, we use that revenue as their budget to pay for protection, to pay for security. The idea being that if you give them the tools that the SAQ asks them for, it makes doing the compliance bit just way easier. So I think that's the way I would look at it. Like, get security in first, try and give them a PCI in a box. It's an oversimplification, and then that makes compliance that much easier. So Kevin, why don't you talk a little bit more about risk-directed security?
Thank you, Gabe. So I'm going to go into some detail because I think it's important that we all understand the specifics of what we're discussing. And when we talk about risk-directed security, we're talking about a solution that combines security tools with threat intelligence and exceptional risk assessment functionality. Now, normally I don't go point by point through a presentation, but I think it's actually going to be important to understand these key elements. So when we're thinking about tailored risk profiles, what I'm talking about there is there's both e-commerce and brick-and-mortar merchants that we need to account for. And they have unique attack surfaces, and we need to address both of those. The risk-directed security incorporates elements of external risk, internal risk, and what we call digital risk. This is more than just an external vulnerability scan or an analysis of a website. It's got to be customized for each merchant locations. Threats are unique, and they vary by site, so protection also must vary by site. It's more than once a year or once a quarter. This needs to be continuous. Needs to be real time. And when I think about asset protection for simple merchants, I come from a security background, so when I think of assets, I think of endpoints and websites and clouds. But there's concept of digital assets. And when we think of simple merchants, often these are sole proprietors. And things like their social media and their credentials are intertwined with their business. We have to protect those assets for them. And finally, it's a complete solution. It assesses risk, is prescriptive in what to do, and it provides remediation tools that are delivered in a manner that's easy for SMB merchants. So as we think of simple merchant security in the years to come, there's 3 principles that I want us to leave with. One is this concept of comprehensiveness. We discussed attack surfaces are ever expanding, they're ever changing, and a solution of this type must address this secular change that's occurring in the industry. The second is that solution must be coordinated. So assessments, risk assessments, and tools must function in a manner where they're integrated. So as an example, potential threats identified in an endpoint solution must be correlated with telemetry that we get from other security technologies. And keep this in mind, solutions that work in isolation lead to opportunities for exploitation. However, solutions that are coordinated, they will reduce risk. And then finally, the third point is they need to be customized. So we all hear this phrase, one size fits all, and one size really doesn't ever fit all. And actually, in security, one size fits all is dangerous. It can lead to disaster. So when it comes to risk-directed security, we have to have a personalized assessment, personalized prescriptions of what to do, and personalized tools for every merchant, every site, and every user. So Gabe, why don't you spend some time actually walking through, and I'm going to go ahead and build this, an example of risk-directed security in action.
Yeah, so this is our risk-directed portal dashboard. So like we start top left, we give the merchant a simple risk score. We derive that risk score from information we already have about them, their website, their email address, their business name. And on the right-hand side then, based on that risk score, we give them intuitive to-do, like a really clear next step to-do list that is constantly changing. It's not generic advice. It's based on a continuously changing environment. On the bottom left, so we provide identity theft protection and also business identity protection. So for example, if one of your employees' email was hacked or credentials were hacked in the dark web, this is where we would alert the merchant on the bottom left. Or if somebody was masquerading or set up a fake social media account, again, it would appear bottom left. And then in the bottom right is like we're constantly with a bunch of security tools that we provide to the merchant. So if there is a phishing incident, if there's a website attack, if there's any sort of security incident that they need to deal with, it appears in the bottom right. And throughout this whole process, we're giving them a very clear next step, and we support them along that journey. So this is not a once a year, it's a continuous assessment, and we're giving them all the support and help they need.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I think we're running short on time. So, but I think you have said a bunch of times, Kevin, like this is not about statistics. This is about real businesses. It's about real people, small business owners. And the truth is, the sad truth is, 1 in 5 of these companies, of these small business owners that have a breach, will go out of business. And I think we all know this. I think as a community, we now have a really great opportunity to be a really interesting channel for cybersecurity to this small business community.
So let's bring this home, and let's talk about next steps. So one is we've got to acknowledge the gap. Compliance in many cases for these simple merchants has been a checkbox exercise. We have to migrate that and move that to active threat defense.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I like about risk-directed security is a lot of the acquiring banks processors, they have already built the rails to these SMBs, the communication, the billing. We're just trying to push a better product down those rails. So I think there's a great opportunity to do that with risk-directed security.
And for these small merchants, we need to prioritize, be very clear about security actions they need to take, and we need to use tools like threat intelligence to augment and really give that direction.
Yeah, and security awareness training is built into this approach as well. So we want to make sure we're equipping these small business leaders with the information, trying to just get them to engage just a little bit more in the cybersecurity of their business.
And then finally, we need to maintain a cycle of prioritization and remediation for all of these merchants. So to end, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.